This is Apostle Cheryl Richardson here. Let me get myself situated more comfortably. Um, Welcome to Shatter the Silence. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, that topic that the Lord has charged us, has given us a mandate to address. He's instructed us to cry aloud and spare not, and so that's what we intend to do. We thank Him for his patience with us and His long suffering, and His continued blessing. So we have a couple of things that we really want to make sure that we share with you all. Again, please share. Y'all know I'm not good at this. Hey, Kelly, I'm not good at just reminding people to share. And also, if you feel so led, I'm going to ask Kelly if she would post our Cash App and our PayPal. Any assistance that you render in terms of helping us to raise awareness around domestic violence is greatly appreciated. So on tonight's Shatter the Silence, we're going to talk about domestic violence, and our topic is when domestic violence and the workplace converge. When domestic violence and the workplace converge. Now, converge means to cross. Hi, Michael Cunningham. Hi, everybody. Okay, so to converge means to cross, right? To cross as lines, or to cut or to divide by passing through or across. And it also means to tend to meet in a point or a line, to incline towards each other, but not as though you are parallel. So you're talking about something that occupies a similar space, but they don't connect in terms of productivity. They run parallel to each other, okay? So we're going to talk about when domestic violence in the workplace converge. There's a lot of statistics I want to share with you tonight, and so I want you to be sure to take some notes. But before we do that, I want to let you all know, I wrote the number down somewhere. Okay, the safety planning video that we did a couple of weeks ago for our Shatter the Silence has had 22,958 people view it. 22,958 people. So that is amazing, amazing, amazing. We're going to leave it up. We're going to leave it out there because it's a key component. When you're talking about domestic violence, safety is the key thing. All right. And as you all know, we don't really advocate, we're not going to put ourselves in a position where we're telling you what you need to do in your relationship or in your situation. Our purpose is to provide you with information so that you can make an informed decision about what is best for you and what you need to do. And safety planning is something that we are adamant about. You need to do it if you plan to stay. You need to do it if you are leaving right now. You need to have a safety plan after you leave. And as we shared last week, the first 30 to 90 days or so after a victim leaves a situation, an abusive situation, there is a heightened danger for them. So there's a tendency to maybe feel this great, tremendous relief, right? Because you've left and I'm out and okay, now I'm free. But not really. You want to be able to view this from their perspective as well. They're going to be brooding. They're going to be angry and frustrated. And they're going to still think it's your fault. And they're going to still think that you've ruined their life. And they may have thoughts of retaliation, okay? And so that's something that you want to think about. Now, that dovetails into the whole workplace situation because let's say you're a victim, okay? Let's say you're a victim and you finally gather the courage, right, to leave because you decide that you really, really want to be safe. Hey, Cassie. Hey, Baston. So you want to be safe, and so you leave. You have a number of things that you need to be concerned about. Number one, you need to have a safety plan in place that includes your place of work. How are you going to navigate the work situation? For some people, they may need to leave their job altogether, and that's an unfortunate consequence to finding yourself in a situation like that in the first place, right? You may need to leave your place of work. Many people will think about getting out. I'm leaving the house. I'm leaving the apartment. I'm cutting off anybody that's connected to this person. Maybe I'm not talking to his mom. Maybe I'm not talking to her father. Maybe I'm not talking to their best friends, right? Maybe I've cut off everybody that is close to them. All right. And I always advise people, anyone who is close to them, supportive of them, afraid of them, okay, because these people are all equally dangerous to you going forward, okay? We all have limits. The average person will succumb to the limit that they attach to a particular relationship. So maybe my brother is abusive, okay? If my brother's abusive, I may be able to agree with you, yes, that was wrong and that was abusive, but how far is my loyalty to the truth going to stand? Will it withstand that relationship that I have with him? For most people, no, it will not. I'm just going to tell you right now. Most people have a limit. And their limit is not a safe place for the victim. Okay? And so I advise people, no matter how close you feel to them, no matter how supportive they've been of you in the past, try not to do that. Because their moment of weakness could cost you your life. All in the name of a relationship that they're trying to protect with the abuser, okay? So, any safety plan that you put in place must include a plan for work. What are you going to do about work? What are you going to do about work? If you can't transfer to a different place, if you can't have them change your shift or change your hours, you want to think about things like, where am I going to park? If I park in the same place, if I park in the same area, they'll know how to find me. They'll know where to find me. If I work the same schedule, they know my schedule. They know my extensions. They know my coworkers. And so these are things, and I'm not trying to, you all know, I don't pander in fear, all right? Because perfect love casts out fear. But I think that we need to use wisdom and understand that, you know, oftentimes we might mean well when we tell somebody, well, get out of there. That's dangerous, and just get out of there now. Well, it's just really not as simple as that. It's really, really complex. And the average woman leaves 7 times before she really leaves anyway, with the concern being that she lives long enough to get out and stay out, okay? So there's all these moving parts when you talk about a situation in which someone is being mistreated in an intimate partner relationship, okay? So let's look at some of these statistics. Okay, most organizations across the country don't have a formal workplace DV policy. They do not. People are focused right now on active shooter situations. What if I were to tell you that what we know so far about the people who commit these mass shootings typically have a history of domestic violence? Okay? Well over 50% of them have a history of domestic violence with the parent, with an intimate partner, or whatever. And so you can see how it's woven into the fabric of our society. And this is a worldwide issue, but especially here right now in the United States, okay? You cannot turn on the TV, you cannot look at a newspaper without hearing about someone else whose life has been snatched away from them because of a situation. In my mind often goes back to, what was the first indication that they got that they should not have gone any further in that relationship? What was the very first indication? So I challenge people to think about that. What is the first indication? And not only what is the first indication, what is the lie that you told yourself that made it okay to stay in it despite your misgivings? It could have been something that we were taught. It could have been something that we've come to believe. We like to wear rose-colored glasses and say there's good in all people. And I keep reminding you all that the Bible does not say that. The Bible declares the complete opposite. So we are looking for people to produce something that they don't have. They don't have it, so they can't produce it, okay? So most organizations across the country don't have a formal workplace plan, a policy for domestic violence. In particular, you have more places being concerned now, and I know in facilities that I have helped to run about, people, if you had an angry parent or somebody verbalizing threats, and then you post their picture and all. But what's the plan? What is the plan if they actually show up? Does anybody have a plan? Most of our companies do not. So those of you who are managers, I want you to really listen to this. Those of you who are in a position in corporate America where maybe you can talk to managers, and even just to be aware for your own personal safety, okay? According to the Society for Human Resource Management, they say that 65% don't have a plan and only 20% offer training about what to do in case something pops off. 65% don't have a plan at all. It's like every man for themselves, something goes wrong. And then only 20% offer training. The Family Violence Prevention Fund states that 75% of victims face harassment from intimate partners while at work. 75%. So 75% of the people, whether they're male or female, but it's overwhelmingly female, 75% of them, of the people who are victims at all, are harassed at work. 75% are harassed at work, okay? The American Institute on Domestic Violence says that 96% experience problems at work. If somebody wants to capture this, feel free. 96% experience problems at work. 56% are late to work. 28% leave work early. And 54% miss entire days at work because of domestic violence. I'm going to read it again. 96% experience problems at work. 56% are late to work. 28% leave work early. And 54% miss entire days at work. So now here's the question. How does that affect the job? The ability to even remain employed and maintain employment for a victim of domestic violence, whether they be male or female. Many of you are managers. I've been a manager. I've been an administrator. What you've had bosses who may ask you, is everything okay? And then you have some that will be only concerned about the fact that you have clocked in late yet again. They don't know what you went through. They don't know how hard it was for you to get out of the house in the first place. They don't know. You got beat up before you got there, and now you got to listen to them talk about how you were always late. And so a person who is ensnared in domestic violence has an incredible amount of pressure from all sides. Hey, Lavisa, they have an incredible amount of pressure from all sides, okay? And we want to raise awareness because, like I said, many of us are in a position where we supervise or manage others. And if nothing else, you're a coworker to someone else, okay? And so we want you to be able to understand what to look for, what to say, and how can you help? How can you help, okay? 91% of victims resign or lose their job, okay, or have lost their job in the last year as a direct result of violence at home. So we're not even talking about violence that has spilled into the workplace. We're talking about what they endure at home has affected them to the point where maybe they decide to resign because they cannot continue to explain a black eye. They cannot continue to explain a bruise. They cannot continue to explain why they are so jumpy, why the slightest little noise sets them on edge, or why they have a short fuse with coworkers, why they're so irritable, why are they tearful, okay? So that's a lot of pressure. So you get out of the house, you manage to get out of the house by the grace of God, and now you got to deal with a management system who's not prepared to deal with your issues at work. Some who would be concerned if they knew, and some who could frankly care less. They don't care. They just want you to produce, okay? And so there's that pressure. Now, one of the ways that domestic violence occurs that's not physical is financial abuse. And one way to impact that is to impact the victim's ability to even go to work. Or if I can make you look bad at work, or if I can harass you at work, right? If I can call your supervisor, if I can call your coworker, if I can make you late, if I can show up unannounced and create a scene, these are all shenanigans. These are all things that an abuser will do to maintain control. Why? Because if you as a victim lose your employment, you're now dependent on them. You're not able to move. You're not able to leave, right? And you need them. And this is about power and control. The whole thing is about power and control. It has nothing at all to do with how much they love you and having stars in their eyes. They could care less about you. You are a supply for their ego, and for this need that they have to be in control and to have power, which is insatiable. It's insatiable. You'll never satisfy it. You will never satisfy it. That's why there's always fighting. There's always this cycle that continues, okay? And so just think about Think about those statistics. 75% of victims face harassment from intimate partners. Of all the victims, 75%. That means there's only 25% that don't have to worry about being harassed on the job by the abuser. Okay? All right. Let's see. What else did I want to share with you all? In my research, I learned that homicides by intimate partners are rising after 4 decades of decline. That's 40 years. In a biblical sense, that's a generation. And I find that compelling. That after an entire generation has passed, we see the numbers creeping up. The numbers are rising after 40 years. After 40 years. Okay? And there's a reason for that. Okay? We've kind of wandered away from God. God is still at home. He's still the same place. It's us that have gotten off the path, gotten off the track. You know, he's not a central part of our existence, of our life. We are losing our moral compass in this nation, and that's scary. It's scary. You know, right is wrong and wrong is right. And depending on who's saying it, it can be dead wrong, and we'll say it's right anyway. Okay, so all of these things translate into how we value one another or devalue one another and how we treat each other. All right? And so that's something that I want you to think about. Now, listen to this. The number of victims rose to 2,237 in 2017, which was a 19% increase from the 1,875 that were killed in 2014. We're talking about people dying because of domestic violence. That's what we're talking about. All right? According to Entrepreneur magazine, they said that in 2016, homicide was the 9th leading cause of workplace death in the U.S. By 2017, it was the 4th leading cause. Workplace violence is the leading cause of death for women who die in the workplace. Just think about that. 42% of women murdered in the workplace are killed by a family member or domestic partner. So it's the 4th leading cause of death. And 42% of them are killed by someone that they trusted, that they loved, that they believe loved them. Okay? 2% of males are affected. And women are the victims of 77% of non-lethal workplace assaults. So even if they aren't killed, they are battered or attacked, assaulted somehow in the workplace. 80% of workplace fatalities involve firearms. And we've shared previously that anytime even in the home, if a firearm is present, the likelihood that there will be a homicide escalates by like 500%. 500% increase in the chance that someone is going to die if you're in a household where domestic violence is occurring and there's a firearm. So, and I share that so that people who are ensnared in this, or maybe someone is submitted to you in ministry and they're dealing with this, it's important that you understand what they're really up against and what they're really dealing with. And this is why those of us who are believers need to be careful not to just throw cliches out there. Just throwing cliches. Let go and let God. What? What does that even mean? Just believe God. Well, I was believing that I wasn't going to end up in a situation like this in the first place. So where does that leave me now? Okay. So we need to not hide behind cliches and not just rattle off scripture, but we need to be able to put hands and feet, right? God has equipped us to do something about these things that are plaguing his church. And his expectation is that we will address it. Silence is not spiritual. Silence is not spiritual. There's nothing deep and mystical about keeping our mouths closed about evil. There's not, okay? All right, so I wanted to talk to you also about some other statistics that I came across when I was researching. Okay, so excluding robbery or random mass shootings, the motive is usually a mentally unstable employee, right? We're talking about workplace violence, whose life is spiraling out of control and has lost his or her job and comes back for revenge. But more common than that, it is an estranged spouse or intimate partner. More often than not. And this whole idea that, meet them in a public place, see them in a public place. When a person comes unhinged, they're not really worried about. They feel like they're invincible and that they have a right to do whatever they're about to do. They are not concerned about how many people are around. The more people are around, the more likely you're going to have collateral damage is what will happen. Because at that point, they don't care. They don't care. They're not interested in pretending like they care anymore. None of that. Okay, they want what they want. And you left them, and they're not okay with that. Okay, so again, this is why we emphasize the importance of people having a safety plan. Okay, you have to have a plan. You need a plan, and someone needs to know about the plan besides you. Okay, so usually the victim has left the abuser. They may have an order of protection. Let's talk about that for a second. And so people will oftentimes say, oh, well, they hit you, they did this, they threatened you, they waved the gun at you, they threw you out of the car, whatever it is that they did, you need to get an order of protection. And that's true. And then you have other people say, well, it's just a piece of paper. And that's true too. An order of protection, if you are a somewhat reasonable person, may give you just the impetus you need to kind of stay back because you don't want to go to jail. There are many people out there, however, who don't care about that. And so getting an order of protection may very well enrage them. Now, am I telling you not to get one? No, that's not what I'm telling you. Because on the positive side, if you have one and something does happen and you need to involve law enforcement, they can help you. But they don't have the authority to do anything because you made a phone call, unless when they show up, they can see that someone's been damaged or injured. If no one's been damaged or visibly injured, okay, and that's a whole nother Facebook Live, but visibly injured, there's not a whole lot they can do. And in some places where I've lived, everybody's going to jail now because we can't figure out who did what to who, so everybody's getting arrested, which does not solve the problem either, right? So the order of protection makes it clear that you have petitioned the courts and that the court believes that there is just cause for this individual to not be within so many feet of you, cannot contact you on social media, or whatever it says. So at the end of the day, you're better off to get one. But if you know you're dealing with someone that has a volatile temper, again, you need a plan. And so I'm recommending that you reach out to domestic violence advocates in your area. You can hit us up on Facebook, inbox us, or whatever. We'll get you in touch with folk that can help you. You need someone to sit down with you and look at how you can develop a viable safety plan. And your safety plan might not look like my safety plan. You may have different concerns than I have, right? Different circumstances than I have. But it's good for someone besides you to look at it so that they can help you think about things that you may be overlooking or things you may take for granted. And let me say this too. Those people who have children oftentimes will think, well, I know she or he can't stand me, and I know that we don't get along, but they love the kids. Okay, this is the therapist in me popping to the surface now. Understand that you and anything that looks like you, smells like you, sounds like you is in equal danger. Okay? There have been countless stories about non-custodial parents murdering their children while on having them for the weekend or whatever, simply to hurt the other parent. That was the only reason. I'm not talking about stepchildren. I'm talking about biological children, little children, murdered by their parent during a visit solely to hurt the custodial parent. So if they respect you so little and value you so little, okay, that same black heart that can't stand you is not capable of loving anybody else. And so I don't know why we need to believe that. I guess because it's so diabolical. But the reality of it is you cannot protect your children if you lie to yourself about the danger that they're in, whoever that was for, okay, because that's not even a part of what we were going to talk about today. But I really feel like I needed to say that. It's important that you be realistic about the danger that you are in, okay? That's so important. Okay, so as I said, usually the victim has left the abuser and they've been ruminating and they're upset about it and all of that. Okay, um, and what people will do when they get the courage to leave, which is huge, I'm telling you, it's baby steps. It's and every time you leave, you risk the chance that something really bad is going to happen to you the next time you try to leave, because now the abuser knows that you are capable of not only conceiving of the thought of leaving, but you are actually you are actually capable of executing that, and they weren't counting on that. So now they need to do something to try to convince you that that's not a good idea, which usually means that the abuse escalates. All right, so you get a safety plan, right? You say, okay, I'm leaving. All right, I've got all the documents. I've got the kids' medicines. I've got their little comforting toys that they like or whatever. I've got their school records. I've got important phone numbers. And they haven't told their employer. Now, why do you think they wouldn't tell their employer? Why do you think they would not tell their employer? I want you to think about it. Why wouldn't they tell their employer? There's several reasons. Number one, they might be ashamed, right? They might be ashamed. Especially if they're in a position of authority or whatever on the job, and they're running the whole place, but they're being abused at home. I mean, how do you explain that to somebody? So they may be concerned about how they're viewed. They may be concerned about losing their job, and depending on who you work for and their mindset and their attitude, and if they're a narcissist or not, that could be a very real concern. All right. So there are lots of reasons. So oftentimes the workplace is completely unaware. The problem with this is that the abuser can show up on the job and it not raise any red flags at all. It does not raise any red flags at all because nobody knows. And because victims are often really, really good at hiding. They're really, really good at hiding. So what can we do? What can we do about that? Number one, understand what they're dealing with, and understand how grueling and how challenging it is to come to a place where you can accept that this relationship that I place so much trust in, confidence in, I believed I was going to be in this thing for the rest of my natural life. We grew up together. We played in the sandbox together. We've been through this and that together. I cannot believe they're treating me this way, or that they're calling me these names, or that, they're withholding money from me. Whatever it is that's happening that's abusive, first the victim has to accept that the dream that they had for that relationship is not happening. That's not the reality. And it's one thing to accept that it's not real. It's another thing to accept that it most likely never will be, not with that individual. That's two completely different things. That's hard. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. Then there's the embarrassment. There's the shame that accompanies that. And, not wanting people to know, not wanting people to think any less of you, not wanting to accept it yourself. And then the way the cycle tends to go, you have this explosion, then you have this cool down period, then you have the I'm sorry period, the honeymoon phase, and that's when the gifts appear and the flowers appear and all the snuggling and this and that and the other, until the next thing sets them off. And then here we go all over again, okay? And that is the pattern, okay? Now, there are two main categories. There are two main things that the abuser will do. And again, if you currently work, and if you manage people, this will help you to understand what maybe your employees are dealing with, what they're struggling with. And if it pertains to you directly, then it'll help you to understand. And if you're in ministry and people are submitted to you, it will help you to understand from their perspective all that they're dealing with, okay? Now, there are two main categories of disruption when you talk about an abuser disrupting the life of the victim in the workplace. There's work disruption, and that's anything that prevents the victim from getting to work on time or at all. It usually takes place at home or outside of work. So this is not something that you'll see play out in front of you in the parking lot or whatever. Typically, they'll do things to sabotage transportation, flatten a tire, let the air out of the tire, put a nail in a tire, put something in the gas tank so that the car won't even start. Take the keys, hide the keys, start a fight over the keys that then escalates into a physical thing. Okay, so all of these things, and I remember growing up. I remember growing up that sometimes what my father would do, because my mother would work overnights. She worked overnights. He would take her to work. And every once in a while, he'd wait until it was too late for her to catch the bus and then tell her he wasn't taking her. All right? So I've witnessed that. So I know that happens. And it's a pretty effective thing because you either have to plan for the craziness, right? And sock some money away so that you can catch a cab. Today we would do an Uber or Lyft. Or start leaving for work earlier, right? So that if those shenanigans happen, you can still get to work on time. But listen to what I'm saying. Now you're adapting to that dysfunction. You're adapting to it. And so this is why I shared a few weeks ago that the longer you stay in an abusive situation, the sicker you get. They're already sick, but you're getting sick right along with them if you stay, okay? Because in order to stay, you have to adapt and conform to life as they want it, which involves you being under their control, okay? So some other things that they can do that fall under the work disruption category is deprive the victim of sleep, right? Don't let them sleep. What does that look like? That looks like I'm laying down to go to sleep, and now you want to have a deep and mystical conversation about something that happened 6 months ago. And this conversation must happen right now when I'm getting ready to go to sleep because I have to go to work, okay? I know working in mental health and working in situations that you literally could get injured or hurt at work at any given time, it was imperative that I be at the top of my game. There was no walking in there distracted, depressed, or despondent, because that's how you get hurt. In a psych facility, in a prison, in a jail, you do not want to show up to work not firing on all cylinders. It's dangerous. It's for you and for everyone who depends on you to be able to think clearly and to make sound decisions. So there's depriving the victim of sleep, refusing to assist with children if the children are involved, refusing to help take care of the children, which eats away at the victim's time, physical injury before work, getting into that scuffle, that confrontation, that argument, that fight, to injure the victim and to prevent them from going into work, or to make it so that they have to have this added pressure trying not to let anybody know that they've been hurt in the first place, okay? Something as simple as turning off the alarm clock. Passive-aggressive things like that. Turning off the alarm clock. Not putting gas in the car. You use the car last, and you know I have to go to work. You bring the car back on fumes. You know I have to go to work. You're not going to give me any money. So again, sabotaging the victim's ability to get to work, or creating an embarrassing situation at work, showing up to work and acting out, being angry, being demanding, being rude and obnoxious. Okay, hey Tammy. So those things fall under work disruption. Okay, then you have work-related stalking, which would mean following them to work. Coming to work unannounced, looking into windows, just acting weird, making everybody uncomfortable, waiting for the victim after work. Now, the waiting for the victim after work can look like, I pull up in the car and make sure you see me, and I expect you to get in the car with me, or it could just be I'm lurking, which is creepy. I'm lurking. You see me. You know I'm there. And you don't necessarily want me to get in the car. You want me to be scared because you're following me. Okay. And so those are the two major types of disruption that can happen in the workplace that will cause the victim to be really, really uncomfortable and to become really, really stressed and to be concerned about their job. Why concerned about their job? Because many employers, because they don't have a plan, and because society, especially here in the U.S. right now, is so self-absorbed that for them, the solution to the problem is getting rid of the victim. Let us get them out of here. Let's lay them off. Let's terminate them so that that doesn't come around here. We don't want that person creeping around the parking lot, okay? Because again, many places do not have a plan. Now, how can we increase safety at work? We first need to accept the fact that it can happen at work. And we need to stop blaming the victims for it happening. The other thing that we want to keep in mind is even as we put a plan in place, you have to understand the dynamics of domestic violence. Rare is it that a victim, male or female, leaves the first time and stays gone. And it doesn't matter how severe I might think they've been treated. It doesn't matter how severely you may think they've been treated. I've known of people get, orbital sockets broken, cigarette burn, all kinds of horrific things happen, and they go back. So boundaries are important. And we talked about this a few weeks ago in terms of even being there for a family member who maybe continually leaves, come back. The more involved you are, the more at risk you are. So while I'm saying that we all need to raise awareness and we need to all be involved, there are so many different ways that we can be involved. You just having the information that's needed to share with someone that's going through it is tremendously helpful. Being able to point them in the right direction. Being able to connect them with different organizations if you don't feel comfortable getting that involved yourself, all right? But we have to do something. We have to do more than just issue cliches and recite scripture. We need to do something so that we are helping one another in a practical sense, okay? So we need to accept the fact that it can happen at your place of employment, no matter where it is. We need to be aware and teach awareness. Get expert advice. Develop a plan, develop a safety plan even for in the office. If you know you have a coworker and they have a partner that they're trying to leave or they're having issues with, you need a plan for what happens if they come through that door acting up. What happens? Do we have a code word? Do we have a plan? We need a plan, okay? So you want to develop a plan, and then you want to practice the plan. And I tell people that even with your safety plan at home, you want to practice it. And if you have children, you want to practice it with your children, keeping in mind that you don't want to give them too much information for them to inadvertently share, okay, with the other parent. Identify a leader within the team who's going to do what in case something goes wrong around here. And then it's not a bad idea to take some basic self-defense classes or whatever. We're going to interview someone next week that's going to talk about personal protection and all of that. And then according to alarms.org, I thought this was interesting, the top 5 states that women are likely to be murdered at work. Did y'all know that was a thing? The people are actually tracking this stuff. The number 1 state is Arkansas. It's 4th for women killed by men, and 76% of them are killed by an intimate partner. And then 2nd is South Carolina. They're 6th for women killed by men. And then you have Nevada. It's so interesting because I know somebody from all these states. They're 3rd for women being killed by men. Then Florida. Florida and Tennessee are tied for 4th place in terms of being one of the top 5 states that women are likely to be murdered at work. And then Wisconsin and Alabama are tied for 5th. So you have Arkansas, South Carolina, Nevada, Florida and Tennessee, which are tied for 4th place, and then Wisconsin and Alabama, which are tied for 5th place in terms of being the top 5 states that women are likely to be murdered at work. Murdered at work. Okay? Between 2011 and 2017, 596 women were murdered at work. That's a lot. That's a lot of lives lost. That's a lot of lives lost. Okay. How can you tell if someone at work is maybe dealing with a domestic violence situation? How can we tell? How do you approach it? What do you look for? Do we know what to look for? The one thing that we have to do is to slow down and be intentional when we're interacting with others. And rather than the superficial, hey, how are you? Da, 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 actually pay attention to the response. Do we even hear the response? Sometimes I think people don't even hear the response. You could say, I'm about to jump off a bridge, and they didn't even catch that part. Okay, right after they asked you how you were doing. Okay, so what do you look for? You look for bruising. And a lot of times you'll see the bruising. It'll be around the wrist, the forearms where they've been pulled or grabbed repeatedly. You may have marks around the neck. The eyes might be blackened. They might have bruising on their face. They may have bruising on their calves or on their shins where they've been kicked. So you want to look at bruising. You want to look at, is it 90 degrees and they're wearing a turtleneck? Because there's probably a reason for that. Is it 90 degrees in the middle of summer and they have on long, long sleeves? They're the only one wearing these long sleeves all the time. What is the reason for that? Are they hiding something? Has their mood changed? Are they withdrawn? Are they depressed? Are they irritable? See, it's easy in the workplace when people are cranky and they're irritable. It's easy to get defensive as opposed to think, well, maybe something else is wrong. Maybe something else is on their mind, okay? So is the mood different? Do they seem depressed? Do they seem withdrawn? Do they seem distracted? Are they getting calls at work and the mood changes after they get the call? What else? We've talked about clothing. We talked about bruising. Are they tearful? Are they crying at the drop of a hat? Are they arguing with people? Are they coming into work late all the time? Are they leaving early? Are they upset after a phone call? And you see this going on in an ongoing manner. Do they feel like they're being stalked or whatever at work? So if you notice any of those things, it doesn't have to be that they're dealing with domestic violence, but it's so prevalent that it's probably not too far off. Okay? So how do you approach that? Do you walk up to them and say, hey, that's the second time in a month I've seen a black eye. What's going on? No, that's not the way you do that, because they're not going to want to talk to you. Okay? So you might want to say something like, I've noticed, and whatever you notice, you fill in the blank. I've noticed that you're more quiet or you don't seem to be yourself. I've noticed that you've had some bruises. Who's hurting you? Don't ask, is someone hurting you? Don't ask that. Why? That's a yes or no question. They'll say, no, I'm fine. Because the first inclination is to hide it, okay? So you want to ask, who's hurting you? And they may very well tell you nobody's hurting them. But you know good and well they're not that clumsy that they should be bruised up all the time, okay? The other thing that you might notice is they start wearing a whole lot of makeup. Extra. They're extra with the makeup because they're trying to cover bruising, okay? You might ask them, do you have a protective order? Do you know how to get one? I'm not saying load them in your car and take them. I have done that, but I'm not saying that you should do that. But I am saying that it's important that we have the information to provide for them. Are you able to explain to them how to get an order of protection? Who do they need to contact to get one? What kind of behaviors do they need to document and keep track of so that the judge understands that they really are in danger and that they really are fearful? Do you know how to obtain one? And so you explain to them where to go to get one, or you connect them to domestic violence advocates in your area, all right? And then you want to know, is the person that's hurting you here at work? Like, are they here? Are they here? Do they work here with us? Okay, so you want to ask that. Especially if you're a manager, you want to know, is the person that's hurting you, are they here? Are they home? How fearful are you? And then ask them, how can we keep you safe? How can we help you? Um, Different workplaces have different mindsets about it, but legally, there's no getting away from being somewhat liable. Once an employer knows that there's danger, then they're obligated. They have to try to do something about it. Okay, so if they don't, then they're liable in the event that something happens, which is not beneficial to the victim if they end up getting murdered at work. Okay. So it's a person that hurts you here at work with us. How can we keep you safe? And do they have a gun? That's important. Do they have a firearm? Because I told you that the likelihood that there's going to be a homicide increases by 500% if there is a firearm in the home. If they own a firearm, they're that much closer, and it's much more lethal. It's much more lethal. And then, as a manager, as a corporation or whatever, law enforcement needs to be notified, because that way they know if they get a call from that office or that location that there's been a threat. Okay? And so the thing is that secrecy, we've got to get out of this whole secrecy thing. We got to get out of that. We've got to get out of that. It's detrimental to everyone. Now, the psychological profile of someone who is likely to come into the workplace and kill a bunch of folk: a controlling nature. That's not surprising, right? Obsessed with power and control. Violent opinions, boil them in oil, shoot them, kill them, do this, do that, and anytime they have a disagreement or something with someone. Unable to get along with others. Okay, I like to say they don't play nicely in the sandbox. Assumes that others are out to get them. They always feel like people are out to get them. They have a tendency to go after people legally all the time. There are people that this is all they do. You looked at me crazy, I'm going to sue you. And then I tripped on your curb in front of your business, I'm going to sue you too. So they tend to be very litigious. They play the victim often. They frequently use very violent references. And they are incredibly disrespectful in terms of interacting with others. Okay? We talked about stalking. Okay. We talked about that. I want to make sure that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover with you all. Essentially, what I want you to know is what to look for, so that we know that, so that we can be more sensitive to when someone around us is jammed up in a domestic violence situation. Okay. Because lives are being lost, and the frequency. I've read you the statistics regarding how frequent it is. One of the most recent instances that really impacted me, aside from Karen Smith, which I reference often because that was the moment that it just settled in my spirit that we had to do something. We had to do something to raise awareness, because it was just crazy to me that she would die the way that she did, loving the Lord as much as she did. And so I want to shake the church, especially across denominations, out of this fairy tale that we have embraced, that nothing bad can happen to us because we belong to God. The Bible declares that his people perish because of a lack of knowledge, and not just because we lack it, but because we reject it when it's presented. Okay, so it's not just the not having it, because God is obligated to get to us the information that we need to keep us safe, to help us to have an abundant life, and to help us to have a fulfilling life, and to walk on our purpose and to walk fully in our destiny. But if we reject it, or we decide we're not going to do anything about the knowledge that we've been given, then we become complicit in whatever happens down here. And that means that people's blood is required at our hand. So once you have this information, you're responsible for this information. Once you watch the video, all those 22,000 people that viewed our video from a couple of weeks ago should have an understanding about a safety plan. They know how to reach us. They've been provided with resources. We are now responsible for utilizing the information that the Lord has provided to us, okay? There was a doctor, Tamara O'Neill, and I believe this happened in November, but it happened in Chicago. She was an emergency room doctor who had been engaged. She broke off the engagement. Her ex-fiance showed up at the hospital at the end of her shift. She's an ER doctor. Okay, so again, domestic violence does not discriminate. He could care less how many alphabets you have behind your name. It does not care what title you wear in the church. It don't care about none of that. It doesn't care, okay? He approached her in the parking lot. She was so terrified when she saw him that she dialed 911 and said, he's going to kill me. She called 911 herself. He shot her. So again, being in a public place doesn't guarantee you any safety. Doesn't guarantee you any safety because they don't care. They are completely off their rocker at that point. They don't care. They want to destroy the victim. They've got one mission, and that's to snuff out the life of the victim. She called 911. He killed her before they got there. Then he ran inside the hospital. All right? Killed 2 people in there. One of them was a police officer. It's like all of that mayhem and destruction. And these were people who were at the emergency room to get healed and delivered and set free from something, right? And all of that popped off there. So an abuser doesn't care where you are. They don't care that you're in public. There is no meeting them in a safe place in public. That's a fairy tale. The best thing for you to do is not meet them at all. Don't meet them to say it's over. Don't meet them to have a summit meeting, a come to Jesus meeting, a prayer meeting, and no other kind of meeting, okay? Because you as a victim, if you are a victim, you have zero influence with them in terms of impacting how they process things or how they think, because they have decided that you are the problem. And because you're the problem, you need to be extinguished, okay? So, she was an ER doctor. It sounds like everybody loved her. It sounds like she was a sweetheart, compassionate, concerned about her patients. Realized that something was wrong with this relationship. Something was wrong. Broke off the engagement. And he shot and killed her. Murdered her in the parking lot of the hospital. And then ran inside the hospital and killed 2 more people. Just because they were there. Just because they were there. So the police, he exchanged fire with SWAT. They shot him, and he shot himself. So he died. But he left all of this destruction behind him. Now here's the thing. She broke things off with him, which is what you should do. But here's the thing. You have to do it soon enough. That means it's imperative that we are honest with ourselves when things start getting a little weird. When things start getting a little weird, don't wait for it to escalate to a physical thing to extricate yourself. And then, as I said before, do not make a public service announcement. Do not give an ultimatum. Some things shouldn't even require an ultimatum. Today, look at me and cuss me out. I don't have nothing else to say to you. And I'm done right then. We're through here. We're done. Okay? We have to stop. And this is where the church comes into play, because often we'll misappropriate scripture. Love is patient. Love is kind. All that's well and good. Okay? But if that thing's not mutual, okay, you're setting yourself up. Because that devil's going to be a devil, because that's what it is. Okay? And you're not even playing out the same playbook. You apples and oranges, mangoes and bananas. There's no commonality. There's no common ground. You don't have the same value system. And more importantly, if you're being abused and mistreated, they don't value you at all. As a matter of fact, they have assessed you with all of your education and all of your degrees and all of your friends and all of your bank account, and they have decided that you have zero value. They've decided that you have zero value. That's what they've decided, okay? And so I want to encourage church folk. I can talk to us. I want to encourage church folk to take off the rose-colored glasses, stop misappropriating scripture as an excuse to do nothing when people around us are hurting, okay? It's inconceivable to us that we can spend as much time as we spend in church. We can spend as much time as we do in revival, in gatherings, because that's a new popular term. And people around us, just based on the statistics that I've shared with you in this session, someone probably within arm's reach of you is going through it. Do you even know who it is? Are we paying attention at all? Are we noticing that people are withdrawn? Are we noticing that they're not coming out as much as they used to? Are we noticing that they're more irritable? And what are we doing when we notice it? What are we doing when we notice it? Okay? So our whole focus is to ignite hearts, enlighten minds, safeguard destinies. At the end of the day, the most important thing to us at Lion of Judah Global Impact Ministries is that people are free to do what God has ordained for them to do. The entire reason that they were born, that they are free to do that. So if it looks like bondage, if it looks like slavery, if it looks like manipulation, we're allergic to that over here. Okay? And everything on the inside of this apostle stands up and says, no. That is not what God intended. No, we will not be quiet about it. We're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep educating people. And we're going to try our very best to save lives, because we all have a purpose and a function down here. We need each other. We need each other. And we don't need each other beat up and with a black eye and distracted and depressed and suicidal, because we are locked in with the enemy, who we understand from a spiritual standpoint will try to isolate you. Well, that's what he does in the natural. Isolate you. So now all you have is the names they're calling you. And at some point, because you stay, you start co-signing what they say about you. It's the only way you can stay. You can't stay any other way. A healthy person's not staying. A healthy person's not staying. It's very subtle. Very rarely do they come off like gangbusters in the very beginning. And let me just say this. If you have just gone through a breakup or whatever, you sharing with a new person how badly the old person treated you, it's too much information. Too much information. What they will do is promise to treat you differently. And it's going to seem like they mean it too. Until they don't. Okay? Until they don't. So the ways that we have customarily handled things and handled relationships are counterproductive. They're counterproductive. Okay? I would say absolutely be prayerful before you embark on a relationship. But I would also say absolutely keep your eyes open after you have embarked on said relationship. And if something don't smell right, then something's probably wrong. Okay? If something doesn't feel right, something's probably wrong. And you don't need to have to justify that to anybody. If it doesn't feel right to you, if it's not working for you, if it's setting off a red flag within you, that really should be all of the warning that we need. But often, that's not enough for us. And we misappropriate scripture, and we make it okay to stay. And then after a while, the argument becomes, well, I've invested so much. Well, they were dropped on their head at birth. Well, their mother left them. Well, their father was a crack addict. Well. Okay. Your life, the life of those who are submitted to you, has more value than that. And there's not one of us that's more important than the other one of us. So we all have value as far as God is concerned. He sent his son to die for every single one of us. All right? And so just armed with that information alone, nobody has a right to devalue anybody else. We all had so much value, he died for us. So how dare us demote anybody? I mean, how obnoxious is that? Okay? So, what I want you to know, that the workplace can be a very, very dangerous place. I want you to be more sensitive to your coworkers. I want you to maybe even talk to your managers and say, listen, do we have a plan in case something like this happens? Only because it's happened so much in the news. I think it was in Florida a couple of months ago. This guy went to his wife's job and like killed people. It happened in California last year. It happened, well, more than once in California because I mentioned Karen Smith. But just this thing, even with the doctor, this is a young lady who pressed her way through school. She was from Indiana. She got a medical degree. She's working in the ER. Everybody loved her. He killed her. Yelling something about he wanted the ring back. Let me tell y'all something. Give people their stuff. It's not even worth it. Give them their stuff. Let them have it. It is not worth it. Mail it to them. Whatever you need to do. Insure it. But holding on to things is subconsciously you're drawing them back to you. You're drawing them back to you. You're giving them a reason not to leave. Okay? So, get rid of all reasons. Counter the loss. Keep it moving. Besides that, from a spiritual standpoint, a ring represents like eternity. It never ends. And that's something that you want to end, so you might want to give it back anyway. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you for joining us on tonight. We're going to be back on next week. Oh. We said that we were going to launch the private group, private group on Facebook regarding domestic violence, primarily targeting like faith-based people so that we can look at scripture and put things in this proper context so that we can know how to minister to others, so that we can receive ministering from others if we need it, because no one is strong all of the time. Then we've got to have a place where we can go and just be transparent. I am apostle so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and I'm stuck right here with this. I need some help with this. Some place where we can get help and not feel ashamed and not feel embarrassed. We have some group rules. I'm scrutinizing whoever pops in there. I promise you, because God is holding me responsible for this. And we have rules. No, these are things that you shouldn't be doing in life anyway. But no bullying, no hate speech, no profanity. If you feel like you need to cuss, there are plenty of groups, even about domestic violence, that won't mind you dropping some F-bombs. But we mind over here. We don't have to talk like that. We don't have to act like that. That's not who we are, okay? And we can get dominion over this thing without acting like the enemy, the thing that we're trying to vanquish. You cannot be submitted to it and war against it at the same time, okay? So the name of the group is Dominion Over Domestic Violence, and the tagline is A Sanctuary for Domestic Violence Warriors. We use the term warriors. Survivors is fine, except when you look at the definition for the word survivor, it also means residue or scraps or leftover, and we're greater than that. We're greater than that. We are better than that, okay? Christ died for us. We have value, all right? So we are warriors, and that means that no matter what stage you were in, whether you are still with the abuser, whether you've just left the abuser, whether you've been out for 20 years, you're welcome over there. So we want to create an environment where people can extend support and receive support when needed, right? Without dealing with all the cussing and profanity and all that kind, because that is completely unnecessary. Okay? All right? And so we told you that we had 22,000 plus views on the safety planning video. We'll be talking probably, I think, about gun violence next week. And we're going to be talking with a personal protection specialist person and someone who is well-versed in terms of even firearms and things like that. So we can talk about the role that firearms play in domestic violence, but also it's just like anything else. If you get the proper training and you use it under the proper circumstances, it can actually save your life, okay? So we're going to be looking at that. We solicit your prayers. We are committed to doing what God has called us to do. We appreciate your support. You can check back through the thread, and if you want to support us, we appreciate it because we're doing a lot right now. Then Kelly has posted our Cash App, and she has posted our PayPal, and we would appreciate that as well. Also, we have our ministry blog, which is Judah's Roar, and that's at www.judahsroar.com. And then we have our online school platform, which is Anointed Fire Empowerment Courses. So God has got us doing a lot. We thank Him for sustaining us. And we appreciate you. We want you to stay safe, stay prayerful, okay? Connect with us. Inbox me if you want to join the group. There'll be like a series of 3 questions that you'll need to answer. And that's going to help me to know who should be in there and who should not be in there. But again, you can be, any of the 5-fold ministry gifts. You don't have to be one of those at all. You can be a deacon. You can just be Sister Sally. It does not matter. If you have a history of domestic violence, if you want to be able to help others in a safe environment, if you are ensnared in it right now and you need some support and some encouragement, you are welcome. Okay? All right? Love you all. Keep us in prayer. And we'll be back on next week. Blessings to you.